This is A is for Adversity, a podcast about curating your life stories to connect more deeply with others. Some stories may have Christian undertones, and all stories will involve a realization or transformation of some sort. I'm your host, Jen Banks. This is episode X, Xample of Storytelling Coaching. You guys, only this episode and letter Y and letter Z, and then that will be the end of season 2. I feel like this season went way faster than the last one. And I'm getting more and more excited about season 3 as it approaches. As usual, I will take a 2-week break between seasons, and that's perfect because we will be moving into a house. Yay! But I will resume on, let me pull up my calendar, January 27th. That will be the first day of season 3, episode A. Stay tuned for episode Z because I will be giving a season 3 sneak peek. Okay, today's episode, as I mentioned, is an example of storytelling coaching. This is when I worked with Marcus and Raylee Tarr on their stories for my live storytelling show. If you don't remember their stories or if you haven't heard them, refer to episode S where it is the broadcast of the live storytelling show.
Thanks for helping me out for a few minutes.
No problem. Yeah. And I'm just recording it, I don't know, just mostly for my personal benefit. If something happens to be of merit, I might share it on a podcast, but I don't really know, obviously. So
Okay.
no worries. But yeah, no pressure.
Okay. So should I just, I don't know, start with it and you'll stop me, or do you want to prep me with anything?
No, you're good. Yeah. If you want to tell me the whole story, that's great. Or if you want to just tell me an outline, whatever you're comfortable with.
Okay. Yeah, so as far as the outline goes, I'm just, so it's, the general story is got invited to Disneyland with my family this summer to go in October. So it was great. We made all the arrangements. The day before, I'm going to dramatize this more, but the day before we realized we actually didn't have reservations. Okay, so it's like moment 1. Moment 2 is the scene where I'm sitting in my living room and texting my mom, and she's like, "Hey, did you make these reservations?" And I thought I did. So I'm like, "Yeah, we did." But once I downloaded the app and started prepping, I realized we didn't, and you need those now. And so we were like deliberating on what to do, and we got it. We had gotten a tip that you could still possibly get in if your family has reservations. They were all good. So we jumped on the plane the next day, not knowing if we were going to be able to get in or not, or if we would just have to do other things because it was too late to cancel. And so we finally got there, and the final scene is us, standing in line, like going through the ticket booth, trying to find the nicest person to work with us. And we finally get through, and we have to go through like a couple of managers, and finally the end result is they work their Disney magic, and we let them know we had family. We thought we had made reservations. Honestly, we did. And they were able to get us in.
Wow.
So that's the short outline of the story. I don't know if you have any tips on things to alter.
Yeah. So with these kinds of stories, like I mentioned before, we look for our moment of realization or transformation. So what would you say was like the defining moment with that trip? Just like having faith, even though it wasn't like going to work out, or I don't know, what would you say you like learned from that experience?
Yeah. I would say having faith in the goodness and magic of Disney. I feel like there's a couple different meanings or that you could take from the story, like morals, if that's what you want to call it.
Yeah, so I'm trying to think because so I've learned about storytelling from Matthew Dix, and what he always says is whatever the ending of your story is, the beginning should be the opposite. So just so that you can demonstrate change over time. Okay. And so there was one story that I had that it was, we were living in Boise, and I had lost my wallet, and I spent hours looking for it, retracing my steps, and nothing. And then later that night, we got a knock on the door, and this couple was like, "Oh, we were running by your house earlier, but we didn't think you were home, so we just waited until later to bring it back to you. And
Mm,
so I was like so surprised, that someone would do that. And so he was pointing out to me that like my belief was kind of a lack of faith in humanity, that things weren't going to work out. And um, so then the beginning of that, oh yeah, so the beginning of the story would be a lack of faith in humanity, and then the ending would be like, oh no, there are good people. So I'm
yeah,
trying to
yeah.
think how we could frame your story like that, like um if you begin with like maybe discouragement or something like that. I'm trying to think, because which works because you didn't think you were going to be able to go. And so just so that at the end it's really surprising when you do get to go in. And I'm trying to think too, like, did you have any backup plans? Like if you weren't going to get in, like what were you going to do instead?
Yeah, yeah, and that's what we were thinking. We were like, well, we could we were starting to think about all these other activities that we could do instead, but I mean, we didn't set anything in stone because it was all
Hinging
dependent
on that
on,
moment.
yeah, all resting on that moment. So
Yeah. Yeah. So that would be good too to include in your story too at the beginning, all those backup plans or things like that. Because basically, you want to create a possibility tree. As much as your audience might think, oh, yeah, okay, he's going to get in, they might not know. Like, you want to just keep them guessing, like, oh, well,
mm,
what are they going to do instead? Just so that it's not so obvious when you get to the end that you get in. Does that make sense? I
yeah,
don't know.
yeah, makes
Yeah.
sense.
And then I like how you said scene one, scene two, scene three, because yeah, as long as you provide a location for each one, then that will be great. I'm trying to think what would be the best place to start your story, because sometimes that's always interesting. Um,
Yeah,
it might be interesting with your story to talk about, okay, we're walking up to the gate at Disneyland and we got to find the nicest worker who's going to take a chance on us, to kind of just bring them into the heat of that moment, and then dip it back into backstory. Does that make sense?
yeah, yeah. I mean, like it's ABC or starting with
Yeah.
B and then ABC kind of
Yeah.
format.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I'm just trying to think, because it's all about stakes in a story. So we kind of talked about that at that pumpkin potluck, because you want to give your audience a reason to listen. So if they already
Right,
know, like, are we going to get in? Are we not?
right.
Then that's
Yeah,
good.
Rayleigh was mentioning that yesterday, like some kind of hook for the
Yeah.
audience, rather than just starting out a couple months ago.
This is my family, and
We my family invited me to Disneyland. Yeah, like what? That's what I was thinking of. What could I do differently at the beginning?
yeah. And so whatever you do decide to do, and we can talk about that more if you want to, but just make sure you start with action. So put, which I think I mentioned to you, start with a verb,
Yeah,
get your story going, moving. And then, yeah, preserving surprise is so hard, even for me, because it's hard to visualize what the audience is going to be thinking. It's like, are they going to just see right through it? Or are they going to, think that, oh, is this going to happen? Is this not? I don't know. Okay.
mm,
Let's see.
yeah,
Oh, yeah. And then I'm sure you've heard this before too. Like, humor at the very beginning of a story is great. We've heard that in like talks and lessons and stuff. Right at the beginning, humor is perfect because it kind of puts the audience at ease and makes them think, oh, okay, I can trust this guy. This is going to be fun. He's going to make me laugh. And I don't know.
right, right.
Matthew Dix always points out like situational humor, which I hadn't really thought of before, but I start out my story in a carpool. And so he was just like, oh, there's all these jokes you can make about carpools. Yeah. Anyway, so I was like, oh, okay, that's a good point.
Right,
Um,
right.
let's see. Did you have any other questions, or like, is this helpful at all? I don't even know.
Yeah, yeah. This is helpful. It's things I probably wouldn't have thought about otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's just like the how to, how to actually implement them.
Yeah. And then I don't know if we talked about this either, but telling your story and as if it's happening right now, because that's another way to keep the audience like in the moment or visualizing it. So I'm going to say in my story, I'm driving down the street with a car full of people, you know so as if it's happening right now.
Okay, so like fast forward. Okay, I'm sitting in my living room,
Hmm. I get
and
a text from my mom.
I get a text from my mom, and it says this, and I say
Hmm.
kind of like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Fast
Yep.
forward, we're standing in line. Look at Rayleigh. She's kind of nervous, going back and
Hmm.
forth. We're
Hmm.
discussing how we're gonna, get in, how to make this work.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Ah, that sounds great.
So first person present tense.
Yep. Hmm. Yeah, that's what I meant to say. Present tense. I don't know what I was. Yeah,
Okay.
present tense.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah,
Um,
and then it's so funny because even as you were just like kind of telling me that story or just those lines, those are great ways to just drop in stakes or keep the audience guessing. Like, I'm sitting in my living room and I get a text. I can't believe what it says. And, that might even just be a great way to start the story too, because you just kind of leave them hanging like, oh, what does this text say? Like that's immediate stakes anytime you have a phone call or the doorbell rings or things like that. So that's something to think about too.
Yeah, maybe start my story there and then backtrack to 2 months earlier. My family had invited me to Disneyland. And okay.
Yeah, because then that's a possibility tree right there. Like, oh, what does this text say from his mom? Like what's going to happen? So, yeah.
So a few weeks ago, I was sitting in my living room and I got a text from my mom. I mean, is that hooky enough though? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, is that enough of a
Right?
draw?
I think it is. I think it is. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know.
Cool. Maybe I'll make a few of these changes, and then I don't know if you have like a few minutes, like early next week, we can run it by you
Yeah.
one more time
I'm
and see.
happy to. Yeah, I for
Okay.
sure am. I know it's kind of been funny because I called Cody a few weeks ago, or maybe even a month ago, and I was like trying to go through his story with him, and he was like, "Yep, got that. Yep, like totally just it just
Yeah.
didn't seem like he really wanted my help, which is fine. Like I just don't want to force myself upon people, but it's like I have all these suggestions, but I don't know, it's fun for me to talk through stories. So
Right.
yeah, so I'm
Yeah.
glad. I'm happy to do it. Yeah. Okay, how's it
Oh,
going?
it's going good. Yeah, I made a couple tweaks to my story. Rayleigh's gonna have me go first, and then she kind of wants to review hers with you.
Okay.
If that's okay.
Yeah, sounds good.
Maybe I'll just like tell you my whole story this time instead of just the points.
Yeah.
Again, more practice the better. I've kind of like ran through it in my head, but I haven't really like spoken it.
Yeah, and it's powerful speaking it out loud because I don't know. Matthew Dick says this all the time. You sound so great in your head, but then once you say it, you realize things, or I don't know, it just helps. And it's nice too because he always says he practices in the car or in the shower when he's alone, and it just always helps to have an audience. Even if there's just one person, it just always makes a difference. Because I'll practice mine in the car on the way to work, and I'm like, I sound so weird, but even then, it's just talking to someone, it's nice. So anyway,
Right.
sorry. So go ahead.
Right. Okay. So last month I was sitting in my living room and I got a text from my mom that made my stomach do a somersault. Yeah, I haven't really worked on my ending, but that's
Yeah.
the story.
Yes. No, that's great. Yeah, the ending is hard because I'm still even working on my ending because you want to wrap it up nicely and you want to say what you learned and you want to, I don't know, you want to
Yeah.
close it nicely. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it was really good. It was told really well. That's the nice thing about storytelling is it doesn't need to be like flowery and all this, magical speech because you want it to just sound like you're talking to someone, and that it totally did. So that's perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I like about it because it's like it stresses me
Yeah.
out to try and think of all these metaphors or similes or whatever,
Right,
Anyway,
trying to make it natural.
yeah. One thing I would say for the beginning is, so you did great. You started out talking about how you were sitting on your couch and you got the
Yeah.
text, and I liked that line about your stomach, the somersault. If you can, with that first scene, just remind us that you're in your living room. So if you say like you paced back and forth, or you sat down at the table, or I don't know, something that keeps us in your living room, because otherwise we just stop the visualizing, because we want it to be a movie or like a scene in our mind. And then again, with the beginning too, you said like something you should know, just take out that part completely. Just say a few months before, because it's that addressing the audience thing too, like if you just say, I received this text from my mom and blah, 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 blah. A few months earlier, we had planned a trip to Disneyland, like you don't need to say something you
I
should
don't need
know.
to be like, well, to put it in context or
Yeah.
why, so
Mhm.
you understand why.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I know it's kind of weird, but yeah, just to avoid talking to the audience. And then, yeah, so those are just little things, but
That's good. Yeah, what else?
yeah. Yeah, I liked how when you got to the moment of were you going to get in or not, you really dragged it out because that's what you want to do. You want to just like make it as suspenseful as possible. And you're like, we're talking to the lady and she tells us, oh, I can get you in for one day. And then we have to go to this blue tent. So yeah, that's good that you really draw out that moment.
Yeah.
So when you said before too, that your three scenes, so you said you're in your living room and then what were the other ones? Or did you just say you have 3 parts?
Yeah, I think. I mean, I guess I thought living room, really short, like on the plane, just like contemplating what we're gonna do. But that's not really. I mean, I don't really have a lot of details on that, so maybe you should just not consider that a scene. And then standing in line that day. To me, it's really kind of only two scenes.
Okay. Yeah, and that's fine. So, yeah, if you do want to just eliminate that plane, like you could just say, okay, we're at Disneyland. Like people know, like you can get there. Matthew Dix always says just eliminate process language because a lot of people will say like I did this and this and then we went here and we went here and here and here and then we're at this place. It's like you can just say we were at Disneyland. Like people just know you got there. And then you can just have all that speculation in that scene. And it's
Okay,
good
yeah.
to, the fewer the scenes, the better, because then that's all you have to remember. Okay, I'm in my living room. Okay, I'm at Disneyland, And if you want to just add a tiny little bit of detail to like, I know you said too, like, if you've ever been to Disneyland, just eliminate that and say, so we walk up and there's 20 different lines, that was good.
Oh yeah. I guess I
That's okay. I know
kind of
it's so
neglected that
hard.
in there too.
It's hard to not address the audience because that's what you do with talks or lessons or things. You have an audience and so you address them. But anyway, it's
Right.
it's not too big of a deal. It's just I guess it's just something that I pay attention to now. I don't know if I've talked about this before either, but the fewer the adjectives the better because then people don't have to keep track of them. But even if you just had said one more detail like it was a beautiful fall day or we're walking up past these trees or something just to help people visualize a little bit more that you're in Disneyland. Does that make sense?
Okay, yeah. So wait, you said the fewer adjectives, the better?
Yeah, just like don't feel like you have to like over explain like oh the sky was blue and we walked past flowers and there were all these trees and like you could even just say it was a beautiful fall day because people will put fall in their mind and they'll picture it or but I know California is different too so it's like I don't know just like it was not too hot not too cold I don't know it's just something
Yeah.
to make them feel like they're there too.
But you're saying like actually add more scenery.
Yeah, just one thing, or if something sticks out in your mind of how you could describe it, because that was good, the 20 different lines of people, but I'm just trying to think about how to like make it a scene so people feel like they're there.
Right. I mean, because I can
So,
picture it, but I don't know what other people are picturing.
hmm yeah, I know, and it's hard too, because if they haven't been to Disneyland, then it's like, oh, I don't know what they'll picture, but
Hmm.
um, yeah, I don't know. I'll think on that too. But it was really good. I enjoyed it.
Good. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. hmm
Um, but you've been hearing she was just in the other room,
Hello.
so she
Hi.
heard everything. Let me take the
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, it sounded really good. I really liked it. I think that as you continue to like work through it, some of the kinks will just fall out and it'll be
For
good.
sure. Yes. The next part will be the coaching I did with Raylee. She originally started with a different story, but I didn't include that for the sake of time. Yeah, great. You're off to a very good start. I really like how animated you are when you tell a story. That will be so good. The thing to be cautious about with a written story is don't get too married to the words that you have there because otherwise it'll sound too memorized or if you forget one you'll like panic, but
Oh yeah.
just know that kind of like I was talking with Marcus, figure out your scenes and then whatever you say in there, if you say it a little bit different each time, then it still makes sense, So that's just a word of caution there because I know that like writing it out is super helpful and good too. Like that's definitely a strategy. Just make sure that you know that.
Cool.
So yeah, I love the starting, how you started out in a car and Target. I love that detail because, the specificity of it, people can relate to that. With storytelling, all of our details, we want to support what we're trying to convey to the audience. So I'm thinking that maybe after the car, you talked about your mission a little bit.
Mhm.
Maybe you can just jump right to your job and be like, yeah, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I started working at a bank. I did know that I liked helping people from just serving an LDS mission, like just like cut that part a little bit shorter,
Okay, so cut
Does that
the
make sense?
short So cut it shorter. How?
So just the transition you made, it just seemed a little long. So instead of going from the car to like, oh yeah, I went to my mission and I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I wanted to help people. But I don't know, it just seems like you could just go immediately into I started at a bank. Like,
Okay.
so
So
Like refer back to this mission, but don't make a whole paragraph of it, maybe.
yeah.
okay. Okay. Cool. Cool. Okay. That's helpful.
Which it's so hard too because we love our stories and we want to say everything about them, and
Yeah.
it's just so hard. Like you just gotta like hone in on what you're trying to say, what you want your audience to know, Otherwise it kind of distracts or something. But
Okay.
the Matthew Dick said like kill your darlings or something like that. Like, oh, I want to say that, but I can't.
Nah, that's funny. Okay. Cool.
I'm trying to think. Okay. Yeah, and I loved the contrast in there from which I know I heard it on my podcast too, so it's good hearing it again too, but the contrast from despair and discouragement to like hope and prosperity and like
Mhm.
finding solutions. So that's so good.
Did it sound like a pitch? I like don't want it to sound like that. I just want to tell like the story. How do you think I can better do that?
Yeah, I think for sure it didn't sound like a pitch. Maybe is there some other experience from your life? Like, what makes you excited about money? Like, was there another thing growing up that like you got interested in money, or was it just all kind of like it just happened when you were working at the bank?
No, I mean there's lots of I've always had money jobs. Um, I've always worked with money, which is interesting. Just being a cashier, working at the bank or the financial industry I do now, like it's I don't know. I've always just been doing transactional stuff. It's just fun.
Yeah.
We didn't have very much money growing up, but I don't know if I want to tell that part just
Uh-huh.
because it's embarrassing to my I don't care, but it's embarrassing to my mother and she
Mm.
doesn't like me telling me that or she doesn't want me to share that with when I speak on stage and others on other stages. And so
Yeah, that's interesting. That's too bad because oftentimes the storytelling like vulnerability is huge, and yeah, but that's okay too. Like there are other examples that could support your story. It doesn't necessarily have to be that one either. So, but that's just interesting. Let's see.
what is the reason? Let me ask you this because I can kind of brainstorm. What is the reason why you would like me to change from the story of the attorney to something else?
No, so I think you should definitely keep that. I was just wondering if there was another part of the story that you could add to further support that. Like, so, there was this lady I was working with on her story, the one that was going to be at the storytelling show, and her story was about how she's a perfectionist and very controlling and just like she wants things to go her way. And so she had planned out this whole week of girls camp and she had it exactly planned out. It was going to be the perfect lesson, the perfect things that the girls needed. And everything went wrong that week and it rained. And so they couldn't camp in the backyard like she wanted. And they had to do things in her basement and things like that. And so she ended up learning that, her lessons weren't exactly what the girls needed. It's like more like God's lessons are what the girls needed. And so to start her story, I had her think about an instance where she was a perfectionist or controlling just to kind of show the audience who she was as a person. And so the first experience that came to mind, I thought it was so funny. She said that when she was in middle school, high school, she would have this notebook where she would plan out her outfits and like what she wore that day. She wrote it all down and she's like, okay, it's been 3 weeks since I wore this and I wore it on this day. Okay, I think I can wear it again. Like, I don't know. It just was a way to explain to the audience who she was. And it was just kind of a way to laugh too. So I'm just trying to think if there was a better, maybe something to start out your story with or something that could further exemplify this passion. That's why I was trying to think of another personal example for you too, so that it would again not sound like a pitch. It would just sound like, oh, this is my personal experience. This is always what I've wanted to do.
Yeah.
This, I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, I'm not sure.
I know, and it's okay. You can think about it too. And I know it's like close to the day of. So if it stays this way, that's totally fine. I was just trying to think of another way to improve upon it too. It's funny because as I've gone throughout my life these past couple months, I'm just connecting more and more that what we do when we're little ends up being what we do as an adult. So that's something that I'm going to say after Cody's story, because his is talking about how when he was little, he wanted to be an engineer, and that's what he's going to do. When I was little, I would put these plays on for my grandma, and, you know, just these productions, and we have home videos of them, and I was just a host, you know, and it's just so funny because here I am now wanting to host my own events and be this like party person. So I don't know, it's just kind of funny. And then my friend, she was always like so organized as a little kid. She would just put all her room was always immaculate, and now she's helping people organize their pantries and organize their houses and things like that. So I was just wondering if there was like that connection with you too, like if you, like you said, if you played cashier when you were little, or if you
did.
really liked Monopoly or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah, I don't know, because it would be kind of cool if you were doing something like that and then your mom's like, oh, what do you want to be when you grow up? You know, like, even though that's not exactly how it happened, like that's a good way to convey, you know, like you can bend things a little bit in storytelling, but
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, I'm kind of like, I don't know. Should I change my story? Like, is it like, should I change it to something else that would be like easier to tell? Like, I have lots of stories of like when I was in Africa, when I got lost. Once I got lost in Africa, that was intense. That was fun. And so maybe I could, because this is like, there's a lot of emotion, there's a lot of history, there's a lot of detail, there's a lot of personal stories. So maybe I should just simplify it and just tell like just tell a different story. I don't know. Because like I totally hear where you're coming from. I don't know.
Right? I know it's hard. Well, and I don't think you should throw it away altogether. Like maybe it's just not ready to tell, or if you do end up telling it, it would be great. I have no doubt. And like I said, I think what you have is a great like structure. I just think that it could be added to a little bit. But yeah, as far as other stories, so as long as you're one in Africa, as long as it really has a moment of realization or transformation, then that would be great to tell. Because Matthew Dix always says, like, if you're telling a story about a place that you went to, make sure that if you took away the place, you could still tell the story. Because some people are like, oh, I went to Europe and this happened, you know, just to tell people that they went to Europe, and it ended up being more like a travel log instead of like a story, you know. But I'm sure there would be a moment of realization or transformation there. But it's just like, as long as you could take away Europe and still have a story, then you have it.
Okay, cool. Well, you've been really helpful. What should I do?
I know, right? So hard.
It's so hard. Well, I feel like it still needs a lot of work. Like I need to take out a whole bunch of stuff and add more detail and put in transitions, and I don't know. I'm curious if I should do that or if I should just tell a story that's easier to tell. You know?
It depends. So with your story, I know you have a lot of it typed out. Do you feel like you could tell it without like really practicing it or really looking at it a lot? Does that make sense?
No, not yet. I have to like learn it. Like, which I was planning on doing the next couple of days. I can learn things pretty quickly. But
yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
if you
worry,
want, yeah,
no, it'll be great.
Yeah, no, I trust that for sure. Yeah, and Marcus said that's just your personality too. This is how you like to do things, which is totally fine too. Wait, if you want, I can.
What? I don't get that. Marcus said, "What about my personality?"
Oh, he just said
how I like to do things.
He just said that like when like kind of like crunch time, you work better under pressure or something, like since it's closer to the event, you know, then you're like, okay, now I'll think about it, you know, instead of like two months ago.
Yeah.
No, anyway, no, it's funny. He said it very nicely, don't worry. I probably said it.
No. I just didn't understand like what you were saying.
Got it. Yeah.
But now I understand, and like no, that's funny.
And if you want me to help you brainstorm other stories, I can help you brainstorm if you want, or we can just, I don't know, or you can just do it on your own, whatever you want. Because there are a few little like tricks to finding stories too. But
what are some of those tricks?
Yeah, so there's this game that Matthew Dix suggested. It's called First, Last, Best, Worst. And there's often always a story with that, like your first car, your first kiss, your first house even, you know, or like And so like first, last, best, worst, the last time you went to the dentist, or the last time you, like things like that, or your best gift ever, the best. Yeah. Or then, then same things with the worst kiss ever, the worst trip ever, things like that. There tends to be a story there. So that's one way. Trying to think of what
Okay.
else Matthew Dick said.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's kind of a fun game to play. So you can even just play that in the car or whatever. You just give someone an object like teddy bear, like tell me about your first teddy bear, tell me about your last teddy bear, tell me about your best teddy bear, tell me about your worst teddy bear. So
That's so funny. That's
yeah,
so cute.
I
love that.
know. Yeah.
Well, I mean, there was one story that came to my mind as you said that. Probably the best present I've ever received was this beautiful purple dress that I got for Christmas. And my family, we I have seven. Well, I'm the second oldest of 10 kids. I have 7 brothers and 2 sisters, and so we didn't have a lot of money.
Yeah, that's really good too. And that's definitely serendipity because you weren't expecting to get anything, let alone a dress. So that's really unexpected. That's really good. And so with that one, since the ending of your story is like that self-worth and knowing who you are as a person, then the beginning would be like feelings of inadequacy, or like feeling low self-esteem, or a time that you, really didn't feel like you were worth anything. And then you lead into Christmas. So,
Okay,
yeah.
Cool.
So that might be a good one.
I feel like I just told that whole story with with ease. And so
yeah, that might be a good one. Cause
that might be a good one.
Yeah, you just want it to be like natural and something that just comes to mind, and putting in that emotion. Like as long as you can like visualize how it, what's the word? Like relive it, then that's great. Yeah. So, cause I sensed that. So that was good.
Cool. I
Yeah,
think I'm gonna do that one.
That's good.
That was so easy to tell.
Yeah, that's good. And that's good. It came to mind.
Was the beginning, the end, and tied in. I feel like honestly that's better. Even though yes, I am passionate about what I do. Mm-hmm. I feel like, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's helpful too. Like I'm sure you'll be able to use that story for something with your financial career. So that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. No time wasted for sure. And then the one thing I was going to say as you were telling it is, it's the one piece of advice that I have right away, is when you do walk into your living room, like really draw out that moment. Like I look over at the chair and I can't believe what I see. Like don't say it's a purple dress right away. Like really draw it out. So yeah.
Okay.
So, yep.
Okay. Really make it big. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited.
Yeah, that's so good. Jen. Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
Yep.
Well,
okay.
Cool.
Good luck.
Yes.
Have a good rest of your day. Yep. Bye.
Bye.
If you'd like to pitch your story for the podcast, or if you want more storytelling strategies, contact me at jenbanks16@gmail.com, or find me on Instagram at jenbankscoaching.